Hey friends, it is Brigie from Boujee, Texas Barbecue, and today we're gonna smoke a beef shank low and slow. Let's do it. Alright guys, so the first thing we're gonna do is prep this 9-pound beef shank. Here are a few items you're gonna need: your favorite beef or brisket rub, your choice of binder, kitchen scissors, and some chicken twine. So let's talk about trimming. We are definitely gonna trim any excess fat and silver skin, which overall will help the seasoning penetrate the meat. So I recommend letting your meat chill in the freezer for about 20 to 30 minutes to help harden the fat, which will make it easier to trim. Gently slide your knife underneath that silver skin and guide it through. And of course, having a nice sharp knife definitely helps. Also, a little bit of a pro tip: pull up your silver skin as you're trimming. Some of it actually pulls off easily. And when I say trim the fat, I mean trim all the fat, because big chunks of silver skin like to hide underneath that fat. Alright friends, so that pretty much covers the basics of trimming a beef shank. Now let's get into seasonings. You're going to treat the specific cut of meat just like a brisket. I recommend using a fat as a binder. I'm using avocado oil, but honestly you can use any binder. Just make sure you lather it in before applying any seasonings. Now let's get into the type of seasonings you're going to want to use. I really don't recommend using a seasoning that has a lot of sugar in it. I'm keeping it basic: salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powder. And here's why. This is going to be a really long cook. What might happen if you use a rub that has a lot of sugar is that it will over caramelize and end up being a bitter bite. And in the barbecue world, we all know that's the worst bite. Also, don't be scared to heavily season. This is a thick cut of meat, so it needs all the seasoning it can take. As always, I recommend patting your seasoning in versus rubbing. Okay friends, I'm gonna finish up seasoning this big old thing, but we have a couple more steps before actually putting it into the smoker. Do you remember earlier when I said you're gonna need some kitchen scissors and some chicken twine? Well, here's why. Depending on the size of your meat, you're gonna need about 3 to 4 pieces of chicken twine. We want our meat to cook evenly. Not sure if you noticed when I was seasoning, the meat was kind of flopping from side to side. That's not what we want our meat to do when it's smoking. We want to keep it in place and let it cook evenly. I'm definitely not the best at securing chicken twine, but what I do is I tie one knot, then twist it and secure the knot. If y'all seen any of my other content, you know I like to optimize trimmings. So I'm keeping that fat trimmings to the side because I'm gonna make some beef tallow out of it. Just in case any of y'all were wondering why that's in the corner and I haven't thrown it away. But anyways, now you're gonna grab your kitchen scissors and you're gonna cut off those excess strings. And now our meat is ready to go. I'm not gonna lie guys, this thing is already looking good and smelling good. We are going to allow this to do a quick dry brine as we heat up our smoker. Today I'm gonna be using the Oklahoma Joe's reverse flow offset. I'm using 1 chimney of Oklahoma Joe's signature lump charcoal and 3 post oak wood splits for that real Texas flavor. Make sure to leave some room between your charcoal and wood splits. Remember guys, fire likes to breathe, so we want to make sure we have that proper airflow. And now we're just going to wait for our wood splits to catch fire, and then we can go ahead and throw our beef shank into the smoker. Once our offset is heated to 250 degrees, it's the best part. It's time to add our meat. And unfortunately, I did have one problem early on during this cook. The butchers did an amazing job and cut the end piece so this beef shank was able to stand upright. That's because when you cook it, you can preserve the bone marrow. But unfortunately for my offset, it was just too tall. I couldn't close the lid. But that's okay guys, we're gonna improvise because we definitely want to secure that bone marrow. So I added a wood chunk to keep the bone in place and a small cast iron skillet to catch the bone marrow as it renders out. We're just gonna let it do its thing for 3 to 4 hours at 250 degrees. After 3 to 4 hours, or when your bark is intact, it's time to wrap. And our little setup worked. We got the bone marrow. We know it's gonna be a good cook. Now I'm choosing to use butcher paper versus foil so I don't compromise my bark. You will need to moisten the bark back up. I'm gonna add the bone marrow, but you can sub beef tallow or even beef stock, but you will need to add moisture. This specific cut is full of collagen but not a lot of fat. Adding moisture is crucial to prevent drying out your meat. Now, I never said wrapping it in butcher paper was easy, because it definitely wasn't. In order to keep it airtight, I'm gonna secure it with some chicken twine. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can see mine definitely isn't, but just make it as airtight as possible. but it's wrapped and that's what matters. Now we're gonna throw this back onto the smoker, still at 250 degrees, probing every hour. If you are on a time limit, you can definitely increase the temperature to 275. We're officially 8 hours in and our beef shank is almost done. I'm gonna increase the temperature to 275 to help give it that final push until it's probe tender. Once it is probe tender, don't forget to allow it to rest till it drops to an internal temp of 150 degrees. This was my rested beef shank. It definitely did shrink in size, but the bark is amazing and I can even see a little bit of collagen sticking out. So don't forget to remove the chicken twine before shredding. Yes, we did lose a little bit of bark when we removed the chicken twine, but that's okay. I'm just ready to get into this beef shank. Even though we allowed it to rest, it was still pretty hot and I burned my hands a little bit on this part, but that's okay. As you can see, the meat is rich in collagen. Collagen should look like gelatin once it's rendered, and it gives your meat a velvety, succulent, desirable texture. Honestly, nothing really compares. Texture overall honestly reminds me of smoked beef cheeks. It's very similar. Don't get me wrong guys, it does taste a lot different from beef cheeks. How you decide to eat it is ultimately up to you. Just know this recipe is definitely a showstopper and a great way to bring in the new year. Till next time guys, enjoy.